go back. But in 1960s, 70s, devotees would basically move into the temple, and he was responsible for taking care of all those newcomers, making sure they've been given all the resources, all services that are required. So along with that, Prabhu was involved in taking beautiful pictures of Srila Prabhupada. That was one of his very passionate and intimate service to Srila Prabhupada. And he would also record all the classes that Srila Prabhupada has personally given. So I won't take more time, and I'll pass on the mic to Prabhu so that we can hear more later personally from you. Thank you.
Krishna consciousness was like a garden. When Prabhupada came, there was nothing, just some soil, and he planted the seeds, and he watched it sprout and flower. So last night we were talking about the early days in San Francisco and how we were part of the community and how the Swami was so giving and so present and so sweet and caring and wise and adventurous. We could see his spirit. We went places and he would speak anywhere and feel energized by giving Krishna. And so then he wanted us to continue. And so the San Francisco was successful, but he kicked me out of the nest. We were like little birds in the nest that he was spoon feeding, which he did, spoon feeding us. And when he thought we were ready to carry this on independently, he sent us to London. Regarding independence, one day Prabhupada was washing his cloth in a bucket. And I said, I'll wash your cloth, Prabhupada. And he said, no, I want to wash my cloth because it's good to be as independent as possible. So is this a dichotomy, a conflict, that we're dependent on Krishna, yet we stay independent? Well, Krishna created all different types. There's variety. So even though I might think you're a great devotee, it's my path and my relationship with Krishna. You're a great devotee, but you can't do it for me. And even Prabhupada couldn't do it for me. So that's why we're individuals. So even though we're doing similar things, a way to keep this Nava-yovana ever fresh is to appreciate ourselves. It's not being humble. Krishna gave us talents and using the talents for Krishna. And the precedence is that Prabhupada encouraged our individuality and our talents. Gurudas, you do photography, Jamuna did calligraphy, somebody did cooking. And then he said, after I'll wash your clothes, no, I'll do. He said, and then I like to cook for myself. And he puffed up his little chest. So as a sannyasi too, he was amongst us and interacting, but he was using his trunk as a desk. He didn't ask very much. So in a sense, he was saying, let's not be attached more than we have to the material world. Just simple living, high thinking, what we need. And we were able to do it because he was able to. And we were talking earlier about the early days and our enthusiasm and our austerities. Renunciation and austerities was part of the attraction. Spending my life accruing things. Gold tastes the same in an iron and gold pot, Prabhupada would say. So San Francisco was successful. And then we went to New York and then we went to London. And already we were feeling this vipralamba, the separation. But the separation is a good thing because it's a longing. And in the longing, it's an appreciation. So when we chant, it's like a child calling for the mother. Krishna, please. And when the mother chastises a child, who does the child go to for protection? The mother. So it's a really nice analogy. So he deemed that we were ready to carry this on, and he wanted something in London because his guru sent 3 sannyasis to London in 1941, and they really weren't that successful. So he thought to honor his Guru Maharaj's wishes, he would send 3 married couples and a baby. And so, again, we were feeling this separation, but I have to tell the story without Prabhupada a little to set the scene. Samashunda got arrested, and when he was acquitted, there was $1,000. And Prabhupada gave us $50, so we would have $1,050. But we heard that London, England, was very, what they call stroppy, which means very politically correct. And if you didn't have a return ticket and if you didn't have enough money, they wouldn't let you in. So we went to Amsterdam and they let us in. And so then Malati and Samashund and Saraswati they took the boat and they got to England. And they said, we have $1,050. Okay, come in. And then they sent it back to me and Jamuna. There's $1,045. The bank took their cut. So we go, okay, we have 1,040. Oh, come on. Mukund and Janaki. So this is the kind of boldness we've had for Krishna. I mean, we were really bold. I'm going to jump ahead. We're still in England, but I'm going to just show you the boldness, and it's not necessarily spiritual. But when we found Bury Place, the neighbor was complaining. It was Mr. French. And he said that when we did kirtan in the morning, the kirtan would go through the wall and his wife would faint and this little white dog would go yip, 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 jump up and down. We had a member of parliament, Tom Dreberg, who turned out to be a double agent spy with the KGB and the CID, and he was a poet friend of Allen Ginsberg. And sometimes we'd see him drunk in Piccadilly Square and we'd take him home in the Krishna van. He was really a character. But he wrote on House of Common paper, stationery, that it was soundproof. And it wasn't, by the way. The dog, it would go through the wall and his wife fainted and the dog did go yip. So now the officials were there and we borrowed seats from the Theosophical Society. We didn't have any seats for the officials. And it was zoned for 2 caretakers, but there were 36 people living there. And the sleeping bags were stashed in the hall. So the neighbor was complaining. Samashunda bought a whole shipload of redwood from California. That's how sure we were that we would find some place to use that. And I mean, that's visionary. It's visionary that he would ship a whole load of redwood in the hopes we'd find some place to build. So the door was a redwood door with a big window in it, so you can see inside the temple. So the man was complaining to the officials. And so this is the trick we did. So the door was open and we had a rousing kirtan. So let's say these are the cartels. Door open, door closed. Mridanga, open, door closed, door open. Hare Krishna, door closed. They said, well, you said it's going through the wall. We can't even hear it in the hall. He said it's a bloody trick, and he tried to get away. And at that point, the doorknob came off, so he was like a raccoon caught in the headlights. He clawed the door open, and 36 sleeping bags fell out. But because George Harrison was our guarantor, they said, okay, you're zoned. So we get to England. We had one name, two names. And we lived in the suburb, Herne Hill, but it was very far out from the center of London and things. And we held some kirtan and we attracted some people, but we realized we should go to the center, more center of London. And Shamashunda bought this little red Ford truck. And we'd all pile in the truck. It was like some seats and then a place for carrying stuff. And it had a crank to start it. And so Samashinda said, well, Gurudas, you crank it. He also, you'll hear in the story, Gurudas, you do the talking. This time he said, Gurudas, you crank it. And my dhoti got caught in the crank and went flying in the air. So then we contacted the underground newspaper, International Times, because we thought, well, this would be a good way to say we're here and share something. So we did a 2-issue story, the Prahlad story, with paintings that Govinda Dasi and Gursinda did, and I did the text. Well, the managers of the magazine happened to be from Oregon, and they liked us. And they saw that we were trying to establish a place, and they said, well, the place where we have the magazine stored, that's empty because we found this other office that we were sitting in on Endell Street, and this was on Betterton Street. So they gave us the name of the man who owned the building. And so we go there, and there's a beautiful Art Deco building, and we go in the elevator, and we're on the top floor of a penthouse, and you can see 360-degree view of London. And this really skinny, pasty white with a limp handshake comes over, and Mukundan Samuelson said, Gurudas, you do the talking. Well, he was a rare book dealer, so I thought I would talk about rare books first. See, that's the trick. You try to find common ground. So then he was interested in Bhagavad Gita, things like that. He looked like Oscar Wilde. I don't know if you know what that looks like, but he's an author. But see, he's appropriate because regarding individuality, Oscar Wilde said, be yourself, everyone else is taken. So he said we could live there. So we moved from the suburbs. And so we finally had a place in a very central part of London. And it had 5 floors. So one floor was for brahmacharis. There was 3, Kulashikar, Tirthapada, and Digvijaya. They joined us. And then Grihasters, and then there was a temple floor. And on the top floor was someone named Michael X. And Michael X was a branch of someone named Malcolm X. And when I was in the civil rights movement, I used to hear him speak, and he was very effective. So this was the branch. But it was incompatible that we had a temple and he's living on the top floor. Well, there's a bunch of babies and meat eating. And so they said, Gurudas, you do the talking to get him to leave. Well, I could speak black language, you know, well, could you find another crib, man? You know, Jumbo and. But really what clinched it was that I said, and we're gonna be singing at 3:30 every morning. So he left, but I got him out of jail. They planted some contraband in his apartment, and he called me and I photographed it. And it proved that they couldn't have found it because there's babies and Santeria objects and anyway. But he moved, so now we had the whole thing. And later on, when we met George Harrison, because we heard this thing with Monty Python, I would say, George, I was so poor that I slept on the floor. And he would say, you had a floor? And I was so poor, I slept in a hole. You had a hole? And I was so poor, I slept in a box. You had a box, but the funny thing was that Malati slept in a box. Sarah shouldn't have made a little apartment for her with a refrigerator box with cardboard windows. So she lived in a box. And I don't think there was any hot water. So now there was a place called the Arts Laboratory. And it's where all the artists and musicians and squatters, people would take over buildings and live, and I actually would photograph them and feed them. And so we all, 3 times a week, we would have kirtan. And it was a place of, it was like the Renaissance, all the people who came there. And 2 people from Texas were in charge of it, Jim Haynes and Jack Moore. There was a woman named Christine Keeler who brought down the whole British government because one of the ministers was telling her state secrets. So she was there, and then Mick Jagger would stop by, and so we were part of the community. And then we get a phone call from the manager of the Grateful Dead, Rock Scully, who knew us in San Francisco, and he said he wanted to come to London. So we said, sure, come on. So the entourage was Danny Rifkin, the other manager of Grateful Dead, my friend Ken Kesey, who I knew, I almost went on his bus, the Merry Pranksters. Anyway, we knew each other. And then 2 Hells Angels. One was Sonny Barger. He was the most notorious. And 2 girls, Hells Angels chicks. And they had weapons. And they also brought 2 motorcycles on the airplane, 500 pounds each. So they come, and some Buddhist guy, I don't know. At any rate, they all come to the warehouse. And I made them take their boots off. They didn't like to, but even Hells Angels get jet lag because we fed them and they fell asleep on the floor when their weapons fell. Just like the Pandavas in the tree, the weapons fell out, you know. So they fell asleep. Oh, that's why they fell asleep. We fed them, but we just received a film of the Swami in Boston. It was one of the first films. There's the Swami walking up and down the street. oh, he's sort of looking towards the camera. His eyes are twinkling. There he is. His cane is hitting the ground. We thought it was the most exciting film we ever saw, and they seen an old man walking up and down the street. So after they were shot him, that's why they fell asleep. He said, "Oh, there's Prabhupada." Oh, there's an old man looking. Then Casey said, "Why do you need a guru?" When I gave him the analogy of, would you want a doctor that's not educated, never read a book? And he was good because he got it, and he said, "Your guru's the heaviest." And I said, "One of the translations of guru is heavy." And then he said, He came over and stayed, and I cooked for him, and he became vegetarian for a microsecond. He died. So then they woke up and they wanted to know where to go to possibly have a branch of the Hells Angels. So Mukunda told them that they should go to the arts lab and you could do this and that. And so Mukunda Goswami is responsible for the Hells Angels branch in London. Because he told them where to go, what to do. This is how to attract people, the same old thing, Prashadam, Harinam, but in Hells Angels terms. So we were, again, like San Francisco, becoming part of the community. It was even better because it was smaller and everybody knew each other. There's one guy, Hoppy, who did videos, and the Rolling Stones, and the Metaphysical Bookstore, Miles, and everybody appreciated us, especially when we did the articles in the International Time. But our plan was we've got to meet the Beatles. That was our plan. So the same Hells Angels, now they're there, and they wanted to beat up the Beatles. And they were in this room at Christmas time. And Sam Mashinda went there. He might have snuck in, but anyway, he was there and the room was full. And John Lennon, a street lad, looks in the door and he says, "I'm not going here." He could feel the energy. John said to me one time, "Gurudas, I'm so famous and everybody just wants things from me." And I said, "Your real friends will just give to you, John." And he said, "Like you?" That was really nice. And I said, "Your friends are like a chain that you wrapped around yourself, and now you're polishing the chain. It's time to break the chain." And then another time he said, "Gurudas, I'm going to let my hair grow for peace." And I said, "John, peace takes sacrifice. If you're really serious, cut your hair off." And the next week I saw I had short hair, I didn't shave completely. So then Paul McCartney looks in the room and he says, "I'm not going to go there." And Ringo looks in and he said, "I'm not going to go there." They said Ringo's the only real musician because he had a car. But then George saw Sam Ascendi and said, "I've been looking for you and I've been looking for you." And John and George chanted for 3 days on the trip. They couldn't stop. So the Happening record, they bought copies of the Prabhupada's New York Happening record. So they were familiar. So George said yes. And then we invited Samerson and said, "Well, I want you to meet the rest of the gang." And he said, "I'll come the day after." And he came in a Rolls Royce in Petherton Streets on a small street. When the Hells Angels left in their motorcycles, the whole street vibrated. So George was in the Rolls Royce in a denim outfit. And he came in and he loved Prasadam, and he was already inclined spiritually, but we just clicked. And we had different roles. Mukunda was the music. Sam Mashinda was his friend. We were all his friends, but Sam Mashinda really. And I was to do the philosophy, because there was a way of doing it without stuffing the sound down somebody's throat. Like Prabhupada did the philosophy, so we could not get indigestion, as Prabhupada said. You do too much, you get indigestion, you won't grasp it. And so he became our friend. And so then we said we would like to record the Hare Krishna mantra, because of course Beatles and Apple Records, at one point they invited people to give them ideas and music, and they got overrun with self-proclaimed messiahs and musicians and this. And so they started to cull what was more relevant to them, when they picked us amongst many entreaties for the Beatles to do this and give money and this and that. So the first Hare Krishna mantra was at Wardour Studios. It wasn't Abbey Road. And George Martin, who's called the fifth Beatle, there's a lot of fifth Beatles, but he is the fifth Beatle. He did all the arrangements with orchestras. He was originally a classic recorder and composer and conductor, but he just knew how to do new things, and with orchestras and harps, and so he brought instruments like that. And Hari Vilas had an oud, and I played kartals. And so the thing was that there was only 6 of us, and George wanted a chorus. So 6 became 12, and then 12 became 24, and then suddenly we were a chorus of 48. And then George got all the secretaries, accountants, janitors, everybody in the office, and he brought them. And this guy, Mel Evans, their roadie, loved us. And George had to speed us up, because we went into the studio and we put down madrasas and we were going to have kirtan. And George said, it's $45 pounds an hour. Let's get on with it. He was a really good producer. And so it was very successful. It was the fastest selling single of Apple Records. Hare Krishna mantra went behind the Iron Curtain. It was number 3 in Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia. They played it in Wembley Stadium in between football matches. So then we did a demo of Govindam. But now we had, because Krishna consciousness is so attractive, we had 36 or so devotees now. And it was too big for the warehouse. So George said to John Lennon, we'll let them live at your new place, Tiddenhurst Park, and they'll help you on the grounds and everything like that. And we missed the Swami. We're doing this to get it ready. I'm talking a lot about us, but I want to get to the Prabhupada part again. But You have to see the scene anyway. So we moved out, and in this book, there's really nice photos of John and Yoko at home and with Prashadam. And I used to sneak into John Lennon's music room. There was even sound tours in it. Actually, one night I had to hide in his living room. In the big room was a white grand piano and a confession, from Quaker country in Pennsylvania that John somehow or other. George had a refrigerator from San Francisco with all the decals on it. And he had a radio that looked like a dollar with George Harrison in his mouth. George Washington's mouth would go up and down when the music played. Anyway, so John had this piano and the confessional, and I was in this music room and I heard him and I said, uh-oh. He probably would have forgiven me, but we were in the servants' quarters. This was the main house. So I ducked in like Jim Hawkins in Treasure Island, hiding in the apple barrel where the pirates were. So then I hear a knock on the door. You see, John was a real mixture. He was an iconoclast, a cynic, anti-religious, and give peace a chance. Two sides. So John could be somewhat of a bully. He had that side. And actually, he was envious of George because George was good. And they wouldn't let his songs go on. John and Paul were so good, but George was cranking out things like Here Comes the Sun and Let My Guitar Gently Weep. And so they're kind of begrudging the thing. Well, he's pretty good, but they didn't let him for a long time. And this affected him because he is a good composer. So I'm hiding in the thing and I hear a knock on the door and it's John. You can tell his voice, They all had that Liverpoolian. Ringo Starr said, Gurudas, can I come back as a cat? And I said, why, Ringo? He said, because I like cats. Okay, Ringo. So George was excited about Krishna consciousness. He's saying there's this really good book. And John was saying the Kama Sutra. And I really liked the Sutta. Was that a funny instrument? He might have been, well, they were chipping heroin. Chipping means instead of the vein, they do it in the skin, but he and Yoko were pretty much recluses and it did affect his mood. So he kept on making fun of George, and I'm in the confession, and I hear scuffle, 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 and doors closed, bang. George left, and I was quiet. They went upstairs, and then I snuck out. I don't publish that story. But George is lapping it up. That's the whole point. And see, so now there's 36 of us, and George produced it, and Paul McCartney was the engineer. And Paul McCartney's wife, Linda Eastman, went to school, high school with me. And when we got into the engineer booth, after we did the recording, I said, Linda, do you remember me? We danced, you stepped on my toes. She was a real snob in nice high school, clicky and better, but she was rich. It was a rich town, so she said, no, you're not from Scarsdale. Nobody from Scarsdale would become a monk because let's see how rich we can get, big house, big cars. Well, I said, why not? Krishna owns Scarsdale too. She didn't laugh, I did. But then she said, Paul's my God. Okay. But then she got better. She became vegetarian and all of that. People changed. She was much different. So we had different instruments, and George is placing the microphones. And there was this devotee, Ishan. And he was a loose cannon. Yes. And so we're doing Govinda Madhipur Shantamaham, and his trumpet goes. So George put him in the loo in the bathroom. Perfect producer. So then we would go out to George's house and have a day of it. But in the meantime, now there were 36 people. And so we had this place at John Ryan's estate, and there was a big gallery, and we made it into a temple. And so now we could call Prabhupada. Now come David. Because we have a place, and the Beatles put us on the map from when we first came, and in the suburbs were nothing. Now we're established, and all walks of society are coming, ambassadors, and I got to meet the Indian ambassador, and the whole East Indian community embraced us. We went to different temples and places, and there's a place called the Hindu Center, and went there. And so now we call Prabhupada, now you can come. And he missed us. I remember on the phone, we had the Nigel, whose place we were in, had a phone that everybody could hear, and it was like we were all crying, and please come, and I missed you. Prabhu was saying, I missed you too. Because I asked him one time in Delhi at the airport, was San Francisco Day special? And he said, yes, they were special. And somebody said we were incarnations of Lord Chaitanya's folks, but I don't know about that. Now people say, Gurudas, when you talk, we feel Prabhupada in you. They do, they say that. They feel you're giving us Prabhupada. And then they say, Gurudas, you're like Bhakti Siddhanta. By the end of the night, on the sixth ghost line. You like that joke, Balaram? Good. See, laughter is contagious. Okay, I'll tell the story about laughter is contagious. I told the story. Prabhupada later in India, he said, what do you think of Gaurachan Goswami? And I said, he's a rascal, but a charming rascal. He was the Sevite of Radha Damodar temple. He was legally blind. I lived in Prabhupada's rooms. I used to feed his grandson. And then his grandson would go home and not eat like the monkeys. But one time I forgot to wipe his mouth. Oh, the barbarian fed my grandson. Anyways, but he smoked beedies. He smoked cigarettes. So some devotees used to steal his beedies when they would circumambulate. He'd go, Panchu, his son, the Pujari, would roll out of bed 5 minutes before the arti. Any rate, so we go there, and he said, please, you come, Gurudas and Dr. Kapoor, and he's invited us to his house. So we went on the veranda at Radha Temple, and it was all of Prabhupada's favorite Bengali preparations, shukta and stuffed portals and misty doi and things like that. And so when Prabhupada really liked prasadam, he put his hand down like this, and I'm next to him, and so I'm enjoying it. And but Gorachand, as being a family member, he sat down with us instead of covering us over it like people do from India. They make sure you're served. There was one guy who was so proud. He was a industrious. He used to feed people the basics, and then he would do half cooked chapatis and then feed a lot of people water. He's telling me this crap so that it'll blow up and then they won't eat. And then he brings out the pakoras and the samosas and the savers and that where he says no. And the industrialist said, and then I had them all. And I told it to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, if you make a dog a king and then throw him an old shoe, he'll run off the throne and fight it. That he had that nature. So we're all sitting on the veranda and Prabhupada's like that. And Gorachand finishes and he had to smoke a beedi, a cigarette. People do that. They in the restaurant, great meal. Now I'll spoil the taste of it. So he did it, but he's blind. So he went behind the door, but the thing is, he didn't realize he was in front of the door. So I see him like this, and the smoke billowing over you. And so I was gonna laugh, but I'm a yogi. But I go, Prabhupada's there eating, and I go like that. And Prabhupada sees it and he bursts out laughing. And so then I laughed, and Dr. Kapoor and Sam and Gorachand could tell we were laughing at him, even though he's blind. It was like radar. And then he goes, oh no, I'm in front of the door too. And then he says, and then he stashes the bead and goes, go Vrinda, go Paul. But that was an example of how laughter is contagious. So then the reason we were out of John Len's estate is because I was in a line and a man comes up and says, do you know Sam Shundar? And I said, yes. And he said, he knows him from San Francisco and he had a place that we could rent and it was Bury Place. But there again, the neighbor complained, but I told you before how we got the zoning. So now Sam Shunda and Tirthapada were building Bury Place. So in the meantime, we were all living at John Lennon's estate with Prabhupada. And it was so nice. The caretaker was a friend of Prabhupada, Frank. They were the same age. And he said, Swamiji, there's ghosts in my cottage. And so we all marched down there and Prabhupada said, have a kirtan with loud conch shells. And then Prabhupada said, the ghost is left. And sure enough, Frank said, the ghost is left. And then one morning, I came back from a walk. We would walk. And in this book, you see a lot of photos of June and Prabhupada on the state. They're beautiful. And Prabhupada let me walk with him every morning. So one time I came back and we passed a donkey. Someone left a donkey in the Apple offices. And then Derek Taylor had the donkey, and then they were on John Lennon's estate. And when we passed the donkey, Prabhupada said, worship, study nature. It's one of the highest manifestations of Krishna on the planet. And then I got back, and there was a butterfly in the room, Prabhupada's room. And John and Yoko were so impressed that Prabhupada could live so simply. I heard them speaking. John and Yoko said, we couldn't do that. They had a huge bed about the size of half the room, heart-shaped, with everything in it, refrigerators and instruments and televisions, and so they didn't get out very much. So the butterfly was there, and Prabhupada put his finger out like that, and the butterfly jumped on his finger. I think I told this last night, and then I should have photographed it. But yeah, last night I said the real miracle is that, and when he did miracles, he didn't say, look at me. When he found the sweet water, he didn't say, look at me. When the water came out of the clouds, when he said, oh, take it, farmers, he didn't say, look at me. The real miracle was he said, open the window so the butterfly can get something to eat. That was the miracle, his compassion. So then one morning, a lot of us were walking, and it was like a V. And I saw a worm going towards Prabhupada's feet. And I thought, well, I better say something. The worm's going to be crushed. But then maybe I shouldn't say anything. It's somebody falling under the Jagannath car wheels. They're liberated. Or the Star Wars, the prime objective, that the demigods don't get involved and things. And my mind is machinating, and the worm's there. And then under Prabhupada's feet, and then I noticed our sneakers with holes in it and sandals was making marks in the grass, and I didn't see Prabhupada's footprints. It was like Yudhisthira's chariot that didn't touch the ground because he never lied. Except Aswatthama the elephant, but he didn't lie. Krishna did it. That's why we were able to do that thing with the door, because Krishna was tricky, and that gave us the impetus to do that kirtan like that. So the worm went on, and we were having so much fun, and people were coming. They were doing films, and it was so funny. They would film us in the forest, but somehow or other, there was electrical instruments introducing the kirtan in the middle of the forest. And Prabhupada loved it because then we went to Conway Hall. The pictures are in there too. It's where the sannyasis tried to do something, and we had maybe 6-7 days, and he asked me to make the agenda. So it was like, who am I? The Vedic scriptures. I made 7 different categories, and he loved it and talked, and Mukunda played the organ, and we were getting to be really known in the London yatra. So then Bury Place was ready, and Prabhupada's face was so beautiful. Actually, I have a photo. Here's John. Photo I did of John Lennon. Here's Jamuna I was talking about on John Lennon's estate.
You know who gave Prabhupada that hat, that black hat?
No,
We have it, and I was just wondering where it came from, you never find
The
out.
one that looked like Nehru?
Yeah,
I don't know.
no, yeah, the one that he was wearing in this picture.
Here we are in the Amsterdam airport and no one had money and we just did a thing where it's underground and Prabhupada said there'd be some people who never see the sun and we're running around trying to make sure we would be able to go. And then I looked over at Prabhupada and we were all running around and there's Prabhupada just peaceful and transcendental. And this is the London devotees. Thank you. These are the London devotees. Prabhupada said the temple was not artificial. It was Jamuna was the mother, I was the father. And he said people are so happy that they're not mixing. That was his proof. This is the official Apple. So there's us and I'm in that photo. It's not a selfie. And but I want to show you Prabhupada's face when he saw a buried place.
Very pleased. Do they still have that in London?
No, they moved to Soho. But it's nearby. So now we had a place. Look at this photo. You see the aura, Prabhupada's aura?
Yeah.
There's 3 photos with him with auras. And here's, we're gonna see this is with the deities. I'm getting to that now. But I want to show you this face. Yeah, here's Conway Hall, and this one, of course, is famous for the back to Godhead. Frontispiece, this one. Yeah, look at his face when he saw a buried place. I mean, ecstatic. So now it was time to get some deities, and so we were friends with the people in the Hindu center. And they contacted Prabhupada that we have some deities, and Radharani's finger was broken. So they thought, well, we can't do it, but they were beautiful. But they wanted bakshis, they wanted money. In all my 6 years of India, I never did bakshis. People tried, but I never did it, didn't. So Prabhupada says to me, Gurudas, you and Jamuna make the temple clean. Okay. So then he goes with Tamal and Yogeshwar and Dhananjaya, and they go to the Hindu center, and then at one point Prabhupada says, Tamal, pick up Radharani, is she heavy? And he says, no. And he said, take it to the van. And the guy, Mr. Goyle's going, what? Take Krishna to the van. What? And then Prabhupada gets in the van and says, go. The first time we took him on the freeway, went 80 miles an hour, we looked at him, and he says, can we do that again? And on the way to Lalit Prasad's house, there was a creek, and Prabhupada said, let's go, and we jumped the creek with the car. Anyway, this time he said, and then he bows down, and so then he brought him to the temple. And Samarshanda had a Vyasa that looked like the caterpillars taking Alice in Wonderland. It was cylindrical. And like the first Rath Yatra car was too heavy, he built the altar too heavy with So doing the Abhishek fire sacrifice, myself and Prabhupada were behind the altar, and it started to fall down. And he was like a lion as ours were blazing, and then I was holding it up, and then I said, "Come." We've got two others and to relieve Prabhupada. And meanwhile, there's a fire going there, and people didn't even know. So then again, we had the tradition of Rath Yatras. So the first year, Samarkanda did build it too high and too heavy, and we had to carry them on palanquins to Trafalgar Square. So the next year, the police said, "This won't do. We're not going to let you do it." Well, there was this devotee named Nari Narayan. See, she's already laughing because he's a real character, and him and his brother, his father used to turn the car on the side. He was a mad artist, and now he was a mad artist. Prabhupada called him Viswakarma, but he was a real character. She laughed immediately. So now the police said this one too. So Narayan says, "Well, let's give it a sporting chance." And the police said, "Okay." And Narayan goes to me, "That official looks like a Pekingese dog." No, he thought, "That official looks like a Pekingese dog with a nose made for punching." But the police ended up helping us with the route, and it worked, and we won, we success. And Narayan gets off the cart with an official who looked like the Pekingese dog with the nose, and he goes, "Taba, karakmo, nakam," and the officials, and he said to me, and Narasimha was entering the official's heart, and I said, "No, he was scared." Any rate, it was glorious. We went to Trafalgar Square. We put on a play. People came. And by this time, there was a large East Indian community, so many people, and there's photos of that in here too. So again, we went someplace and it was successful in such a way that it was so successful. Then what's the next place? Because I like being a pioneer. I like finding the temples, but I didn't necessarily like mopping the floor of the temple. I wanted to go to a new temple. And so it was really successful. I read Paramahansa Yogananda's book, and this chapter about Vrindavan stood out to me. There were many mystic cities, but his brother tested him. Go to Vrindavan with no money, see what you'll do. He went to Vrindavan, people welcomed him, gave him money, and then he returned to his brother. He was testing, and so he was actually a devotee of Krishna. And so the Vrindavan chapter stood out. And I asked Prabhupada in 1967, "Can I go to Vrindavan?" And so he said yes. And he remembered. So now that England was successful, he said, "I want you to go to India." And I was put in charge of 16 others, the creme de la creme, Kausalya and Giriraj and Dinanath. And we went. This godbrother had was working for an airline in Luxembourg. And there was a plane with two propellers. It's not just a jet plane. And so the cockpit There was no door, there was just a blanket. And I was sitting with Gurudas, and he's looking, Miss Maya, and I was finally got him to have a sense of humor. Of course, I was telling him Prabhupada jokes, but he was just distressed because in the plane there were people with goats and hens going wee wee. And somebody, when he said there's Maya, someone threw up in the aisle. So we get to Egypt. And I was in charge of the party, so I went to make sure that all the bag and baggage was transferring to another 2-propeller plane with no door in the cockpit. And so I go, so in the meantime, Giriraj takes all the rest of the devotees out on the tarmac and he starts chanting. Well, I saw, as when I got into the airport, everybody was distraught and beating their chest. And what's going on? President Nasser was assassinated the day before. So it's like President Kennedy, they were beating their chests. Then I go out on the tarmac and I see big picture Nasser and black bunting and mourning. And I had a new movie camera, so I'm doing all this Nasser and all the mourning. And there's the devotees jumping up and down. And then I see these soldiers with bayonets running towards the devotees, and they're drooling, and their eyes are red. And Chaitra Guru enters me. And I said, we're singing the praises of President Nasser. And then they put their bayonets up and said, sing as long as you want. So that's the thing, use your intuition for Krishna. We're in this community, we're an oasis. Let's do as a team as much as we can to keep this going together. We have so much to offer, and we're all trying, and we're becoming purified because of what Prabhupada gave us. And this Das Anudas can save the world. So let's Das Anudas each other, be kind to one another, and this way we'll carry on Prabhupada's message to save ourselves and save the world. Thank you very much. And if there's questions, that's fine. The fool can ask more questions than the wise man can answer. Oh, no.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, thank you so much. Prabhu, could you describe a little bit the mood among, the 3 couples that went to London, among you? What kind of mood, like, what type of, how your relationships were, like, give us a little bit of picture of your personal interactions between the devotees, the 3 couples.
He was saying mood.
Mood.
Well, the mood was love. We loved each other, and the oak tree sees the rose and says, what a beautiful rose. And the rose says, what a strong oak tree. So we have different natures, but I mean, and we were a good team. I mean, just appreciating each other and then encouraging. Mukunda was very good at getting permits and things, and so even from San Francisco, the very days were a mood of love and support and building. Because we were building, and people would say, how did you do this and this? Well, we just wanted to see this Swami smile at the end of the day. And so that kept us going. We'd come in, what news? And then we'd tell them, and he would smile. Not all the time. Sometimes he wanted me to do it faster or slower, but the mood was that because he was that, because he was so kind and forgiving and loving, then we could do that to each other. So again, here we are, a great community with great individuals. So rather than judging or condemning, encourage. Because if you judge, then it'll happen to you. You have that in your consciousness. And down the road, you might do the same thing that you were judging against. So, of course, we judge. We're not going to, if there's a tiger on the path, okay, my judgment is to not go on the path. But you know what I mean. Is that all right?
Yes, thank you very much.
My new friend, my new old friend.
I wanted to ask something that maybe that you see a difference from your time with Srila Prabhupada in the ISKCON world compared to now. What are we, let's say, what are we lacking? But then also what is good, what is practical?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. I should just make a tape. All movements in this book, Love, Medicine, and Music, I describe my time in the civil rights movement and how in the beginning we were, again, like Krishna conscious, hungry and building and a team together and overcoming challenges, including getting beaten up and everything. And then at a certain point, the civil rights movement changed too, and people got titles and they got comfortable and they got wealth and it changed. And the same thing with Krishna consciousness. That's why there's three parts, Swamiji, Prabhupada, and Jagat Guru. So as we got bigger, the same phenomena happened. Some people got power. Now, the temple president's the same as the cook, as far as Krishna. The hierarchy is like this, linear, not higher. There's no small service. But because managers have this proclivity, sometimes they can take advantage. And then the very easy taking out of context for your own agenda, like women are inferior and they have Gobar for brains. So the women, I was saying earlier that in some Native American tribes, they do a vision dance with buffalo horn spikes to induce visions. And I helped a brother get ready for the sun dance. I've had a great life, very, very, very good. I did a film where the green grass grew about how the uranium tracings were spoiling the water table and kids were getting club feet and cleft palates. So the women didn't have to go through that because of childbirth. They didn't have to go the same thing. So as we evolve, so people would say, okay, women are inferior and I'll do this. And they forgot why they joined the spiritual group. If we've got Krishna planning, we have no time for lawsuits. If we feel the love, that's going to be versed in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna from within, without, if we feel the prem inside, then all we can do is give it to others because it's so full, and that's what we want, is love permeating inside. And what can I do? Use my talents. So yeah, it changed. But now there's young folks. And it's a mixed thing. It's still going on, and you're here, and I'm here, and there's Das Anu Das, and you're treating me great, and we want to hear these pastimes, and the philosophy is so poetic and so deep at the same time. And so personal. But there's been some impersonalism within the guise of personalism. That people won't take the time, like Prabhupada took time to get to know us. Does everybody know where everybody was born and what your interests are? And so people say, Hari Bol, Prabhu. But that's to me the same as a conversation between surfers. That's a surf's up, dude. Did we have a conversation? So there's been some impersonalism, but and so I'm in the forest, but now if I take myself out of the forest, look at what we have. We have shelves of books, and we have Prashadam near a university, and we have deities, we have each other, and it's going on, and even the Grateful Dead community has not as successful. And there's somebody right now who's making a new kirtan record or a film. And you, who's so enthusiastic, and your appreciation, your glowing face makes me, well, I've got to be that too. Your appreciation helps my appreciation. So being a simple guy, I see, oh yeah, that's good, because Das Anu Das is still going on, and there's a new temple going to be opening up in Oroville, and I'm going to help it. And I get a chance to travel, so I can also see the pitfalls, but I can also see the glories. And in the book, Paul's example, but I keep on wanting I have a preface called All Glories to the Assembled Devotees. So, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled. Did that answer all right?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
Since it's been a long time being in the Krishna conscious movement for myself, and for all our current spiritual masters always spoke about the San Francisco days, the London days, the Vrindavan days. They've always mentioned yourself, Gurudas Prabhu. They mentioned Shamsundar Prabhu, Yamuna Mataji, and so, and all the first trio. And we've always heard it. And just by hearing, they say that, they've done a lot of sacrifices, but today we get to see you. I mean, I'm seeing you for the first time, or rather the second time. It feels like for my generation, the Krishna consciousness was served on a silver platter, rather golden platter, and we got it.
Right.
We got it easy.
Right.
Just by saying thanks, I don't think it ends there, and I don't think we always want to be in your favor, in all the devotees' favor, and all this philosophy, deities, prasadam, kirtan. It's we just got it so easily. It almost sounds impossible, but
but we really, from the bottom of our hearts, we really appreciate the austerity and the pain that you took, to set up this whole movement along with Srila Prabhupada. So, it's my kind gratitude from the bottom of my heart. One question that I would like to ask you is,
I thought I heard a question in your diatribe, your appreciation, but you were also saying, why am I here at this time and not that time? And Krishna put you here. And I needed spoon feeding from Prabhupada because I'm not a great devotee and you're doing it without that, so. Anyway, what's your second question?
Bro, you were very, you were in very close physical proximity with Prabhupada. You must have embraced him and you had all those nice physical association. But after this many years, Prabhupada not being in his physical presence in this planet, how do you reminisce or how do you connect with Prabhupada in terms of how do you feel this
That's a good question.
separation?
That's a real good question. So there's the Bapu and the Vani, and we're all experiencing that, the separation. Even if you didn't get to know him. So now because I was with him so much, a lot of times I'll see something. And I say, WWPD, what would Prabhupada do? Because he's given me so much instruction, so he's with me all the time in my heart and my consciousness and like I say, we've already had the instruction, so I can apply it. And he says, well, you have my books, etc. It's not the same, but it's the same thing with the separation for Krishna. So that means we're longing and hoping. And that is the fuel for our continuum. I mean, I was devastated when he left the planet. So I don't know if that answered them. Anyway, Krishna put you here now, and there's no thing, oh, you're so great, and I'm here. It's not a horse race. You have a special relationship with Krishna, and so do I.
Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisance. It's all goes to your dear Prabhu Srila Prabhupada. My question is, how, your grace, you're able to, fill your consciousness completely with about Srila Prabhupada, about the spiritual master, and how would you suggest us young aspiring devotees to fill our consciousness with our spiritual masters, because Guru is as good as Krishna, but we don't have access to Krishna, but at least how can we uplift our consciousness to fill with about our spiritual master, how to serve our spiritual master, how he's able to serve Srila Prabhupada and that Guru Parampara. But because in our daily life, maybe we attend a Bhagavatam class or do little here and there services to our spiritual masters, but the whole consciousness is filled with mundane, our individual lifestyle, our chores. We don't even think about it. Our spiritual master is unhealthy or is really struggling with his health because of the sins that we are doing. Really, we are not in the consciousness of our spiritual master. How do you suggest to fill our consciousness to serve our spiritual master and all about him?
Whew. Well, first of all, I didn't quite hear everything you said. It was like a stroke every other. It was like, how do we relate to a spiritual master?
How to fill our consciousness completely about our spiritual master and not mundane thoughts about our life.
Who is your spiritual master?
Is this Sriman Sankarshan Dasadika?
Who?
Sankarshan Dasavika. Sankarshan Dasavika.
So did he initiate you? Can you ask him questions?
Yes.
Does he inspire you?
Absolutely.
So then just think of him and your relationship and what you like about what he says and does. Just like me, the Parampara system is, so you have relevant questions that might not even be in the Shastra. So that's why the guru is important. So I don't quite understand your question. If you think of him, then I guess you won't think of mundane things. I mean, or just whatever. All of Krishna consciousness is a positive alternative to mundaneness. Prabhupada used to say we can Krishnaize everything. So Krishnaize everything, and your guru, and I think the more you do it, the less mundanes will be there. As it becomes more part of you and you're doing it and you're doing it. I think then you have the alternative to temporary escapism. I don't know if I answered your diatribe. You did do a diatribe. Anybody else? Any more questions? You have a comment or question?
I think part of the, what Shashikala is talking about and my experience of, observing and going through 55 plus years of ISKCON. You know, that, and now everybody's working, everybody here, you know, I lived in the temple for 35 years. I gave birth to my kids in the temple, and we were a family. And we were talking about the Vaishnava Sangha festival. You know, we have a festival once a year for 5 days where we come together as a family. And part of the service to Prabhupada, part of the relationship with Prabhupada, was being together in a family, that everybody was focused on developing a loving relationship with him. And like you said, seeing him smile. So now each person has to not only establish their relationship with their guru, but with their guru family, with their family of devotees. Because, you know, like she said, they're out in the material world, meaning they're working and they're doing their thing. We really didn't have much of that. I didn't have any of that, actually, after I became a devotee. But now it's essential for 90% of the devotees. And so you really have to make time to establish that. It's not just your spiritual master, it's your the whole group, the family that works together to bring it all together.
Yeah, I was thinking about that analogy you made, like we're in an oasis, a bubble, and then we have to go out into the world, and then when we come back here, it's like a special island or an oasis. But as a community, the more you get to know one another and the more you do projects together, that will held this feeling of family. So try to do this in this community, because there's only so many people offering food, chanting Krishna's name, doing what we're doing. So then that's why we have to encourage each other. So even more love, be better versions of yourself. And no judging, this person's not doing this, or this person's doing this, or you like that. I'm having a really nice time at your house. You're such a wonderful hostess. We've been laughing together, so that's a good sign. When Prabhupada teased me the first time, I knew he really loved me. He said, Gurudas, why are you photographing me so much? And I was, he said, there's a superstition in India that when someone is photographed, it takes their soul and they live less. And so the camera fell from my hand like Gandhi was And he said, what do you think of that, Gurudas ji? Well, I gained my composure, picked up my axe, and said, my camera. And I said, it's not how long we live, Swamiji, it's what we do with our life that's important. And then they looked at me like, oh, my pupil is so smart. And then he said, that is just a superstition, and he laughed. So he teased me. When I massaged him, he said, anybody can rub oils, go out and preach. So are you all coming tomorrow for the India part? I hope you can all, I don't know how big the house is, and I don't know if he's inviting everybody, but I am. No, it'll be like a gathering in Bengal. We'll just sit there with our knees up, Anyway, tomorrow is the India section of the story.
Hare Krishna, let's thank His Grace Gurudas Prabhu once more. Thank you for bringing Prabhupada with your memories and to us. Thank you so much. So as Prabhu mentioned, tomorrow is this third part, and it will be at the house of Surrender Gopal Prabhu. If you don't know the address, please reach out to them or to me. So tomorrow, yeah, it was in the poster in the WhatsApp group. So everyone is welcome, and yeah, we're looking forward to.
You can film it for the folks like this one.
Yeah, yes, we will be broadcasting as well. Yes.
Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking.
Oh yeah, Prabhu, you're giving Bhagavatam class tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
As well. That's great. Also, usual link on Zoom. Who doesn't have it, please reach out to us, and yeah, 6 a.m. tomorrow. Gurudas Prabhu will be giving Srila Bhagavatam class. Oh, from the temple.
Well, there's a Zoom thing, but I thought I could come here for it, right?
Yeah, you can do both.
What?
You can do both. You can speak from here and it'll be broadcast in the way that we broadcast Bhagavatam class. Because people have to go to work and stuff, right?
Right. So I thought I should just come here, yeah,
Sure, yeah, that would be amazing before deities and devotees are coming every morning. Oh my God. And yeah, could you help me to introduce the books in no more details?
So, as you already heard from the class that Prabhu is a photographer, and there's one other book that talks about, actually, he's also poetic. He has written some poems about Srila Prabhupada. So you can also take a look at that book. And there's one more book about being an example, setting an example. By his example, that's Prabhupada's. So there are two other titles too. So we already ran out of these books. But if you are interested, you can give us the titles that you want to have, and Prabhu will help us shipping those books to the temple once he's back to US. Thank you.